I've got two things that I'm looking at, and I've asked Christine if she would do a little videotape for me so I can use this a little bit more with the class, so I appreciate her doing that. I have a couple of ideas for my sketches, and I've got to make a decision. I've got a bunch of sketches that I've done, some of the note 10s, and then I've done some of the simplified grayscale sketches. I like this one. It's over here through that road. And I really like this one too, which is one I've done before. And I'm trying to decide between the two. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one right through here, which is that scene. Okay? It's a little different than what you guys have seen me do here, that you've seen before. So, and I've got my painting already set up this way because that's the way it's going to go. When you get to your paint, you really want to follow your sketch, right? Because that's what you started with. You really want to follow what you were doing with that sketch. So I'm going to hold it up here and just block in. So do you guys see where I'm looking? It's right where the road's going up. Right over there. See the two signs with the two people walking across the yellow signs there, the walk signs? I wanted to try something a little bit different because just because. I thought it would be interesting to show some more, a few more options. Okay, so I'm using this, and I'm really trying to find the patterns. Matter of fact, I could even just turn this thing upside down. If you guys get too caught up with your left brain, just turn your sketch upside down, and all of a sudden I see it for the sense of shape. That's all I want to think about is I'm just looking at flat shapes. Now if I wanted to divide up my canvas, I can do that as well. There's a shape right here. Notice when I'm painting, if I'm talking, I talk to myself a lot when I paint, and I'm not saying anything about trees or skies or anything like that. I'm saying this shape, this line, this area, or this shape, this angle. You see? Those are things that I can really deal with. And I'm thinking really in terms of abstraction. Matter of fact, I want this thing to be quite abstract at first. I'm thinking about terms of design. I'm thinking about where this road is. See, there's about a third here. And what I liked about this particular scene is it has this sort of interesting zigzag, kind of an S kind of curve. I want to make sure that I did sort of a no-no in my sketch. I have the road going right to the corner like that. It's a little more interesting to not, and it creates a little more interest. Now, once I have this set up, where I feel like everything is just about what I like, then I can block in. Remember my little video? The little video that I showed you guys of the clipping my grass with the scissors? This is about the time that all of you get your little clippers out to cut the whole lawn. So this is where you want to get the right tool for the right job. Something like that. Because all I'm going to do now is I'm going to block in. Now I'm working on a white background board. So I'm mixing up a little bit of my Gamsol, a little bit of my burnt sienna, maybe just a little bit of this. Should have put out a new thing of it, but it'll be okay for now. A little bit of ultramarine, maybe a little bit of just some kind of a nice earth tone. Sometimes I don't like doing the burnt sienna totally because it's just too warm. Everything's too warmish. So now I'm going to use this for, guess what? My values, right? So what's my darkest value? I mean, this is literally what I'm talking about. That's going to be a tree. That's as flat and broad and simple that I'm talking about. We'll shape it later. If I look at my values, it's my lightest light, my darkest dark. My lightest light's probably up in the sky. You know, I could keep that just the white of the canvas for now. This is that mountain back there. Thanks, Jim. You got the tools. Awesome. Thank you. Now, if you notice on my sketch, the background mountains and that lawn area that you see, it's about the same value right now. But as I look now, because it's an overcast day, it's going to be just a little bit. What's that?
Oh, I'm pointing it out where you're
Thank
pointing.
you. Thank you, thank you. So I'm doing this thing, this way I'm painting. I'm doing what I would call a kind of a wipeout. And there's a wipeout, but I'm adding as well. Now the road is a little bit lighter. So I might just and you can literally take your rag. The nice thing about your rag is that you're not getting into any little detail kinds of things at this point, right? You're just wiping big areas. Like, see, underneath that tree, now I'm just shaping it a little bit. This is the lawn area. Yeah, you can use that, right. If you wanted to wipe an area like I'm doing right there, just a little bit of Gamsol, right on. Now this here, see I have this shape here, and there's a bunch of trees on that right side. So what do you do with all of that? Well, I see that kind of lighter greenish tree right here, and then it's got this bit of a shape. I can shape it a little bit. So right now, I'm doing two things. I'm basically getting some shape, but I'm also getting the values. Now there's another bit of a tree coming up here. And then there's one up here that's up on that hillside. Trying to keep it very flat. I think in the sense of, I guess the word comes to my mind, graphic. You know, like if you see these poster designs that have these flat shapes. Sort of sometimes we call them these sort of graphic. It's very flat. That's what we're doing at the moment. So how many values do I have here? I'm going to keep the sky. Yeah, 4, maybe 3, you're right. So we've got 1, 2, 3. This is going to be a little bit. Now with the gray day, one thing, even if you you work from the No 10 or sketches you did last week, with the light, everything might be shifted a little bit, but you want to get the inherent value of the big area that you're painting, like the big area of this tree versus that one, versus the big shape here. There's value shifts in there, even though there's not direct sunlight out. Does that make sense? I mean, there's the skylight light, but check
Do
the
that
mirror.
again.
So I'm looking at it through the mirror. I'm looking to make sure I look okay, so that people don't think I'm homeless or something.
Call in the makeup team.
It's important to look good when you're plein air painting. Now, one thing that I noticed from my sketch is I like closing this in just a little bit more. I like that how I had it. So this is actually the brush I should have had before. This is my
Lawnmower?
block-in brush.
Oh.
My expensive, this is a really rare, expensive block-in brush. You can buy them at Home Depot. 79 cents. I love these brushes. What I'm doing is I'm taking any extra paint off that's maybe making it too soupy. Plus I'm flattening out the shapes. Okay. Okay, so if we feel good about our values, we feel good about our design. I like how this is moving me up into the painting this way. I like how this stops me here. There's a little path that goes up into here. And, you know, I don't know where on this particular one, I think the main idea is the passage. You know, when I talk about a main idea or something that attracted me to this, I think the one attraction was this sort of zigzag kind of almost abstract nature of what the sky to the mountain, to the hillside, to that tree, to this tree. But I think it's the passage, like you're moving up into this scene. And this is to muss that up a little bit. One of the important words, an art term, is called muss. Muss it up. Muss it up. Mess it up a little. Not messing it up, but it's that back to the idea between, in nature, chaos and order, right? And one thing that you can all learn is there's a lot you can do with just flat shapes and edge work. Now, if I feel like that this is starting to work, with the values, then I'm almost home free on the colors when I get the colors in there. If it's working value-wise, not sure. I think the trunk could come out over here. I'm not sure. On here, I've got it almost lined up. See, I should have caught that. I don't really want that lined up. I don't know if I really want to get too much attention to it anyway, but we'll play with it a little bit. Okay. Now, even if I did this kind of thing where I could even put that crosswalk in just to break that shape up a little bit. I could even put that sign there. That will become a little bit of one of the focal points, but it's an idea. It's an idea, so. So you see between paintbrushes, rags, fingers, get a little foot on that tree. Okay, let's go ahead now and drop some color into this. Once you've got your set up with your values, then we want to start mixing up some colors. I'm going to show you how to do it when it's not dry. Ultimately, you know, if you want the more kind of less daunting route, it would be where you would let it set up or let it dry, right? And when I do my really large paintings, like my city paintings and things, I do that sometimes because I'm working on several anyway at a time. But that's why I took this brush, clean, and I Just like Bob Ross says, just one hair and a whisper. Right? I love that. I love Bob Ross. One hair and a whisper. Right? What that does is it takes off any of the wetness that some of you will have a problem when you go up to put color on your underpainting. All of a sudden it just kind of musses around and it just slips around. You want it to grab a little bit, and so that's what I'm doing. I'm creating a situation where I can have that grabbing, have it grab just a little bit. Now, for perfect world, I would have had these all out for you, but it won't take too long. My paints, sorry, blue, right? So 2 yellows, 2 blues, 2 reds. It gives us a variety. It can expand our color wheel or our color charts. And you know, another way to think about working in the landscape so that it's less daunting is think about the sense of all you're really doing is you're making some color charts. Right? Big shapes of color charts out here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up that distant mountain. One thing about Christina videotaping this, I'll be able to post this and then you can all see more of the process. And I like to use these demos like that in different ways, so I feel like you have to miss everything. Yeah, I started with the phthalo. So a little exercise on mixing color. First question I want to ask with anything I'm mixing in color, what is the primary? That's right. Is it red, yellow, or blue? Right? And if I look at that distant mountain, I'm just seeing a little corner of it, right? At least from where I'm looking right through there, and it's just that little corner of it. Red, yellow, or blue? Well, it's obviously blue, but is it really blue? Then what blue is it? Is it the warm blue or the cool blue? Or the phthalo blue or the ultramarine blue? You know, with the two blues are probably the harder ones to discern sometimes, which one is cool, which one's warm. There's always a debate. I think some people feel like the ultramarine is a little more warm. Some people think the phthalo blue is a little more warm. I tend to feel, my own personal feeling is that the phthalo is a little more warm and the ultramarine blue is a little more cooler. I feel like the phthalo has a little more yellow in it, more towards the yellow side of it. Now that's really, if you could see this, I don't know if your camera will pick this up, but the color that's on my palette right now versus up here looks like 2 different colors right now. Why? I'm mixing on a gray surface here and I just stuck that on top of what? All this orange, and what's orange to blue? It's its complement, so it's going to look what? It's going to look like vibrant blue. And one thing that you want to remember is it's easy for your colors to muddy up. It's harder to bring the saturation back. So I would err on the side of maybe a little too much saturation, because once you keep painting, things gray out anyway. So I'm going to leave that for now. But what I am doing is I'm trying to match that value. This is where you're matching the colors on top of your values. Okay, let's leave that for a minute. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to mix some of the greens. I've discussed with a number of you about mixing greens out here. Well, let's do this front tree. Red, yellow, or blue. That big pine tree right there. Red, yellow, or blue. You can only pick one of the 3 to start with. Blue's a good one. Probably which color would not be a good choice? The red. Red's complement to green, so there's no red. Well, you might think, but we'll look and see. So blue, which blue? Do you think it would be the ultramarine blue or the phthalo blue? Huh? I'm going to throw down a little bit of ultramarine blue, and then I'm going to add what to it to make it more green, right? One of my yellows. Since it's up close to me, I'm going to go with the warmer yellow. You're right, Peggy. So I'm going to take the yellow cad or the yellow cad medium and add that into there. Now the greens, the one thing you want to be careful with is on the greens, if I were to put a little bit of that up there now, that looks pretty good, but the problem is it's probably too green. Because again, with color, we get into our left brain and we say green. We were talking about greens, like greens all over, green, green. What more could I paint? It's just all green to me. Well, there's a lot of variations, but to me, it's not green at all. I like to think of it in terms of a gray. That's sort of green. See the difference? So you overcome that left brain tendency to get the green, because then most of you will make that tree too green. And I did mention to make something a little more saturated, but the right chroma. You know, you could do it as long as it's the right chroma, not. So that's a little too green. So the next question I ask is, I can ask, is the value correct? The value's pretty close to what's up there. And then I ask, what's the temperature? Is it too warm or too hot or too cold? Right now it's fairly warm green. But then what about the chroma? Is it too green or not enough green?
Too green.
Too green. So what can I add to it to kill the green? Your red, okay, red if you really wanted to kill it, but what else could you add to the green?
Blue.
You can add, oh, if I brought my color wheel. Let me show this to you, but, oh yay, have it. One thing that I've just learned recently is that I've always thought about mixing the complement to kill it. But that's completely killing it, right? What if I just want to take the saturation out a little bit?
Only mostly dead?
What about orange or maybe a little purple? You see, those are sort of split complement. So any of these you can mix to it. I don't really have an orange up here. I could make one, but so if I took a little bit, or the red, right? So just to keep in mind, you don't always have to go right directly across the color wheel, but if I took a little bit of the red, I'm going to keep, I just added a little bit of the red. So technically, if I were to look at that tree, technically there is red in it, right? Mm-hmm. In the mixture. You don't see red, but there's enough red to kill it or to make it gray. So you want to think more in terms of gray. And there's a chance that I probably darkened that a little bit. I don't know if you guys can pick up my little fingerprints here. You see the difference? You'll be able to see it when you watch your video. That's closer to what I'm seeing, and I would even think it's even a little darker than that. So I'm just going to keep working with it. So color, you can get pretty close to what you're matching, trying to match the color. But remember, what's more important than matching the exact color? What's even more important than that? I call it the big R. Relationships. How things relate to each other. All right, I'm going to add just a little bit of the crimson, and I know it's going to be a little bit. You notice how much I'm working down here? Mm-hmm. This is where a lot of artists or a lot of students get stuck where they get too anxious and start putting stuff up and painting too soon. Where there's more work you can do down. So let's use this. Let's use this brush. Okay, I'm going to take. If I like that color, that feels pretty good. You notice that I see light, kind of highlight areas even in a gray day, and I see some dark accents, right? What am I after again? Neither. Good job. I'm after, if I squint way down, something in between that. If I mix those two, something in between. So it gives me a chance to push the darks or the accents and pop out the lights. Okay, so you notice I'm mixing a little bit of medium with this paint now, and I can drag it right on top of. You see how that's taking my paint off pretty well. Now, if this were dry, I would probably just scrub it all in. But when it's kind of wet, I want to be careful. Again, I want to get the right tool, something big enough that I can cover that. Because all I'm after right now is basically putting a color on top of that values shape. That's it for right now, and I could do a couple of these things if I wanted, but that's it. I'll leave some of the reds coming through for right now. That's fine. All right, so that's good. Keep a little bit of that on here. So now we've got a little bit of this happening with this. That's way blue. I can see that now. So I'm going to, before I change that blue though, I'm going to mix up this color. What is it, red, yellow, or blue? It's the grass. It's all the grass in between, red, yellow, or blue. Yeah, I think you're right. Instead of starting with blue, yellow, right? It's closer to yellow. Cool yellow or warm yellow? I'm going to go with the cool yellow. So a yellow light or a Hansa, which is like a really light yellow, which we considered our cool yellow, and then like a cad yellow or a cad yellow medium, which feels, at least to me, to be a little more of a warm yellow. I mean, just for fun, I put that up there. I mean, you can see that's way out where we don't want it. So to make the green, I add the blue. If I were to add, just for fun, we're going to do a little color. We're doing a little color theory here as well. I'm gonna mix a spot using the same yellow. I'm going to use a little bit of the phthalo blue and a little bit of the ultramarine blue. And you'll see the difference between the two. What color does ultramarine blue have in it that's really not so much in phthalo blue? Can you guess which color? Red. And what is red to green? So which blue will kill it more or desaturate it more? Right, so I'll put it up here in the sky. I didn't add enough blue to this one.
That's your ultramarine on the bottom?
Yep. So that's my ultramarine, and you can see how it's more of a natural green. Can you see the two? That's the alizarin crimson. I'm sorry, the ultramarine mixed with that yellow mixture, and that's the phthalo blue. Can you see how that's like kind of a machine green? Just unnatural. It's too green.
Crayola.
A Crayola green. There you go. Get the green crayon out. Right on. I'm going to just take that anyway because I'm going to add, I need the paint. I'm going to just add a little more of this blue. So if I were to put that green color up there, and I'll just put it up there, okay, you put it up there, is it about right or is it too much of something? Well, you tell me, Adamson, that's what we're here for. Is that what you guys are saying? I think it's too green and too dark. So if I add a little bit of the red, you got to be careful though. That's why I work a lot down here because I add small amounts. Bits. And if I add white to it, what does the white do? It does two things. It cools it off with most whites, the titanium white, and it lightens it up. You see how it's less of that kind of greenish? I'm going to add a little bit more of the yellow. And after a while, once you understand color, you'll do it automatically, just like you brush your teeth. But until then, you can talk yourself through it. I think talking yourself through it's a good idea. Now here's a transition. Well, let me get this in first. Let's go ahead and do it with the knife. I showed some of this with my other video, but another way of laying in paint on top of something that's kind of wet is lay it in with your knife. Getting a little mixture in there with the yellow, but that's okay. So I can get some in there, just to give me a sense of what's going on there. Okay, so there's that. Now what's close to that? I feel like that's pretty good for now. Foreground yellow, foreground green. Before I do that, let's jump back over here and put this one in. This one is kind of similar to this, but I'm going to gray it up just a little bit. It's really gray. So what happens to this as it moves back into the distance? Well, that'll work nicely.
Which red did you use on this middle tree or midground?
I added a little bit of the crimson because now it's going back in space, so the crimson will cool it off a little bit, right? So I feel pretty good about that one. This is setting up now, so it might be okay to scrub this in. It's a little too gray, so I can color it up just a tiny bit. Generally, when you're mixing color, you're always asking your question, is it too green? Is it too red? Is it too blue? Is it too light? Is it too warm? Is it too cool?
Do you worry about the edges between the shapes right now, or is something fixed later?
Good question. Do you work with the edges now, or do you work with them later? I kind of do both. I'm working a little bit with the edges, but I'm not getting in there and noodling it. it's way too soon for that. Okay. Yes, these things are starting to happen now. So my goal is just to get this into the block-in stage to show you. So now, since I'm working with that tree, let's see if we can move it back one more stage back here. There's this tree back up in here. Atmosphere perspective, things get cooler and lighter. Might give it a little friend. Okay. I think I'm going to go in and try to figure out what's going on with the rest of that. Mountain back there. If you got the values correct, you can always push the colors a little bit. I tend to push the colors. It's a little bit too blue, so I'm going to add a little alizarin crimson. What color goes away first? Remember, John Carlson says? Yellow's the first one to leave first, or it appears to be. And then what would be the second one? Red. And then the last one would be, you're left with the blue, or something that's a little bit more blue. What I should have done is should have put that distant hill in first, and then that tree in front of it, but that's okay. Don't be afraid to let some of the underpainting peek through. There's a couple of reasons why I like to let the underpainting peek through. One of them is it creates kind of a nice unity. Sometimes I'll leave it. The other thing is it makes me feel like it's not finished. Like if I go up to an area and I completely fill it in, block it in completely, it's like I feel like I'm finishing that area. I want to finish the whole thing up together. I want every area to come up together. So it's kind of all not finished. Like this area is not finished, this area is not finished, this. I don't want to go finish an area and then move on to the next. Why not? That has to do with the big R. Huh? It locks you in, and if your relationships aren't working, you're like,
What's the harmony?
yeah, the harmony. And if it's not going to work, then you're like, well, I don't want to fix it because I already put it all in there. It's too much work. So I like to say you kind of sneak up on it. Sneak up on it. Now, the colors there are still a little intense, but I like what's happening. Now let's go ahead and just block in the rest of it down here. Okay, this one here is, on the gray day, you would swear to me that green and the other green is the same. Doesn't it look the same as you look out there? What's the difference?
One is at an angle, so it's lighter.
Plus you got some shadows.
Yeah, here, remember the heel. What did John Carlson say when there's a heel?
Gets more light.
Light on this side, it's darker.
Yeah.
Vertical.
So if you got a ground plane to the sky, more light. Now right now we have a gray day, so we're actually getting more light on that flat plane. Can you see it out there? So if I were to bring up the value a little bit right here and cool it off a little bit with some of the sky color or some of the mountain color, let's just use some of that. Lighten it. This is one reason why I like using the knife. scrape it. Then I can put back in there what is more accurate. I want to cool this off just a little bit more. Again, a lot of work going on down here on the palette. Okay, that'll do it. I also like to, I think I've showed this as well in some of the demos, but sometimes if the palette knife, if I want a palette knife sort of look for a sort of palette knife technique, sometimes you can take these cards and lay the color in. So right here, where the heel starts, and I don't want to divide it right in half, right? It's kind of a gradual slope, but that heel, let's call it coming down here about 2/3 of the way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys can see this from where you're at, but it's considerably lighter and cooler than that. You see the difference now. If I were to make that difference with a brush, negative space. You see the shift between those two? And I also see on the top, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but it's okay. On the top, I also see the top of the grass up there that's catching the light. Okay, the road. What color's the road yet? Red, yellow, or blue? We're not using black. At least for now. We're not using black. What is it? Blue's a good color. I like that one. Which one? I think you're right. What should we add to it next? Well, if I had the color, I could really do it quick, but I can do it because I have two of them. Orange is the complement, right? So if I were to add a little bit of the red and a little bit of the yellow, I'm just going to do both of the CADs, and it starts to gray off nicely for me. The white's going to gray it off again. One reason why I like to use this palette, at least to learn with and stay away from the grays and the blacks, is because it'll give you a little more sense of color, even when you're doing grays. Whoa!
Good catch.
Lucky! Sometimes we get lucky. And I always stick some up there to test it. What do you think from what I'm seeing now?
Dark.
Lighter, and it's just way too blue. It's kind of a warmish gray, isn't it? Ooh, lighter still. Now notice as you may not see this on the palette until you see the video, but I'm keeping sections of what I'm mixing. I'm not taking the whole thing because I can step it. So I can always go back. I'm adjusting it and I'm keeping sections of it. I've kept all of those sections.
You could turn it into a dirt road.
You could. You really could if you wanted, and that might be interesting. Maybe we could. But right now I'm going to just pretty much copy what I'm seeing, or at least match what I'm seeing. Okay, it took me about 4 tries before I decided to really put something in there. That's what I want to get across to you. This is the slowest fast mode. Oh, and now with we get a little bit of light. We've got some shadows coming across this road that will be really super cool.
Makes 4 times paint.
What's that?
It's 4 times paint once.
Block it in. I've already got the shape. All I'm after now is the block in. Paint's setting up enough now that I can kind of just scrub. This is what I mean by scrubbing. Once it's dry, then you're not going to pick any of the underside up. And this shape's kind of important. It's not really what I wanted at the moment. We were talking last week about straight edges, right? So if I wanted a little bit of a straight edge here, like right here, you can take a card or your knife or something, and right there, if I could find that angle, nice straight edge. And that comes down a little bit more. All right. That's good. And then I'm going to finish this little area here. Okay, getting close. I'm just going to take this to the block-in stage. Okay, now the green, these differences. Is there a difference or are they pretty close to the same? What you're seeing out there, what do you think? Is it more the same of what you're seeing or is it noticeably different? Those two greens. This is what I'm talking about when we're just all green. And this is where we can move things a little bit so it's a little more interesting. When I'm looking at them, they look pretty similar. But what do I know happens to the green when it comes closer to me in the landscape?
Forms, more value.
You're all correct, right? We warm it up. So I'm just going to warm it up. I'm going to take that green and really warm it up. So this is where John Carlson says that, Mother Nature is not always the best designer. I'm designing with color now. I'm still designing, right? You might think I'm painting, but I'm really designing. I'm really trying to get this space designed so that it works. I'm going to put a glove on my right hand too, but you see how I'm taking my knife and I'm holding it up there before I even put it down, before I make the commitment to. I guess it's like dating. Testing things out, right? Testing things out before the big commitment.
With your knife?
It's a big relationship.
With your knife. Big relationship with the big relationships. Didn't I tell you that painting is just like life? Just like life, right? What do you think? That's kind of a nice, let's set some in there and see what it looks like. That's pretty bright. If I got a little bit of sky color into it, because it is reflecting some of the sky, I'm going to keep that pile, and I'm going to move this pile just a little bit. I like that mountain color. And it's gonna, oh, that's better. That's better. Let's put it in. It's a little brighter than what I see, but if I get the value correct, then I'm good. And it's a little more, yeah, it is kind of electric, isn't it? Well, one of the reasons why is because It's on top of this. And sometimes you may not know what's going on with all of your colors until you get them all up there together to see what's happening all together. Okay, so now I'm close to the main block end. Feels pretty good. Notice something about this big tree. Even when I preach to you guys, look at this. This almost happens subconsciously. Got to really think in terms of I want to keep that all flat for right now. Okay. Now the sky. You know, there are some artists who may not paint the sky in until the very end, even when they come in and do some detail work. Some of the things that you have up there might be what we call substitute player, like a bench player, like it's okay for now. It's substituting what would really be happening in there. But I think I would like to get the sky in just because, for one, I've kind of mussed it up, but what if we just went back with a little bit of sometimes I'm not really mixing anything, I'm just flattening out the color a little bit. Okay, and that's still pretty true to what I'm seeing here. Though I noticed one thing that I wasn't very careful on in my design. You notice here that the road is a nice 2/3 of the way down. Notice how I almost mindlessly put it up into the center. Those things happen. I don't know why. It's like we center things. So if at this point, if I wanted to change something before I get to the detail stage, it's easy enough to do that. And I'm going to just lower this a little bit with this color. I think it was this one. Nope. We'll just still it. I have enough up here, I'll just still it. Then that's going to make that more half. It's a little more dynamic. I just pull that down a little bit. So you can change things at this stage. These should be a little more parallel to each other. It's not going so much to a point like I'm showing. A little more interesting. And then I'm going to keep bringing this warmer version down, or this shadow version, just a little bit lower. You see the light of the, so you see the heel going up and then the front. So I've got with the temperature shift of that green, I've got this plane going like this and that plane going like that. So a little bit of a shift of temperature, a little bit of shift of value. And then now I can come in, and before I get to any details, I can work with some edge work. You could actually just work with edge work for quite a while. Matching that again. I'm going to just push this a little bit lighter. Make sure I get enough on my brush. And then I can start carving out so I can consider this as sort of a little bit of detail work, but I'm just working with edges, right? And this is kind of a soft edge back here, and I had this little tree back up in there. Tip our head sideways like we do. This is if I get back into this color, see I've kept these colors because I want to go back in now and do a little bit of edge work. This is kind of this sort of willow kind of tree, and you could consider this as a bit of a detail, but it's just working with the edges. See how it's kind of dropping? Gives it a little more structure, or idea of what kind of tree that is. John Carlson talks a lot in there about, this week he was talking about light, but he was talking also about the feel of a certain tree or the feel of a... Okay, I'm going to just finish up here with some little touches. I just wanted to take this to a basic lay-in like this and show you that you can even just do a little bit with edges. And I'm not doing any light or dark sides because it's really quite flat out there at the moment. And I'm just keeping in tune with the flatness of everything. Be careful not to overpaint anything. There's actually a separation of, this is interesting, back here. I'm going to push the, there's a little bit of this light behind the tree, this trunk here. I have the sense of that skylight. And I can carve into this tree a little bit. Here's the trunk. But in the front here, this tree's a bit in shadow. See it. Too much of a line. So this is the main block in, but you notice that I can go in here now and just play with some of the edges. This is the less is more stage. Right here, I can really show off a feature that would be helpful, I think, for the design that I don't really have in here that I could put in. And that's this curb. It's kind of warmish. Maybe a little bit of the the paint drag off, gives a little more dimension to what's happening in the road. I mean, technically we could stop right here and we could call this finished. We could call this a finished painting. This is shadow underneath here. It's kind of light. I wanted to put that here. And now these are, so I'm going to just show you how I do a couple of accents, okay? This is where you don't need to do a whole lot. This is where you could get a few accents. Too dark. Down here where there's hardly any light. See, what's nice about working on a big flat shape is even if I wanted to do a few of these dark accents, you see how I'm carving? This is a detail. See how I'm carving out into the tree? And I'm not going to do a whole lot. The tendency is you'll go like this. You'll see all of those spots and then your brain will go, yeah, spot, 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 and you'll be mindlessly doing it, and then it's not really doing what the tree's doing. I'm trying to follow a few, but I don't want to put that many in. Maybe there's some shadow underneath some of these. So it's kind of just really a top light right at the moment. Puts a little shape to the tree, you see. And then over here, if I were to do some accents underneath this one, I got to be careful because it's not as dark. It's moving away from me. And some of these accents over there on that tree. See just a few. I don't want to get spotty or anything, just a couple of shapes. That's all I need.
So for the trunk, you leave most of the underpainting for
Huh?
the trunk of the tree at the bottom.
Down here?
Yeah,
That one?
yeah.
What about it?
You just mostly use your burnt sienna to come through.
Yeah, actually it's kind of a gray color down there.
Yeah.
Trunks are generally not the color we think they are. Again, they're kind of more gray. I see kind of a purpley gray in that trunk. And I don't really see it in here, but I could put a piece of the trunk going up into there. So I don't want to do a whole lot more than that right now. This is going to be a little bit in shadow because this was a bit of a light where this is a little bit more in shadow.
The sun's coming up.
Yeah, now here comes the sun, just in time for you guys. Oh, it might be just sun for you guys. Yay. Adds a little more dimension. If I wanted to put those crosswalk things, I could do those with my knife. And that's going to be not white paint, but it will be sort of a cool, too much. Just showing you a few little details, and this is about as far as I would go with it. It's kind of a lighter version of this road. Put that person walking right there. Adds kind of a nice little element. So those kinds of things work because of everything else. This is a little bit of the show, you know. But you don't want too much of that kind of stuff. You know, if I put a little person in there, then it would become the focal point, but now they're gone. Put a little person in there or something. Or a little duck. I'll probably take this out. It'll look stupid. It's really small. It's a really tiny person, but that's about the size they are.
They're about trunk
So, anyway, it's amazing what the eye and the brain can do. Okay, the light's out, you guys. Okay, that's good for now. Thank you.